Ever since Halle, he'd stuck to casual flings because his life was complicated enough without inviting any more drama into it. But even with casual hookups, you had to watch your step. And with Chantal, he'd obviously missed a step. He'd picked her up in a bar near his apartment in the Marais the night he'd put Lizzie on the plane home to London after their week-long pre-Christmas holiday in St. Moritz. And an hour after Chantal had served him his first drink, they'd been going for it in the bar's stockroom. Why not admit it? He'd been feeling down, maybe even a little lonely. So he'd jumped on Chantal and her come-hither looks, and used her for sex. But he'd already known in that stockroom that Chantal was needier than the women he usually dated. And while he couldn't have known then she was this unhinged, he still shouldn't have allowed himself to drift into a 2-month affair with her. He soon realized he hadn't picked the best moment to consider where he'd gone wrong with Chantal, though, when she sucked in a breath and spat in his face. Salaud! Imbécile! He flinched, the spittle dripping off his nose, and made the cut above his eye sting. Yeah, I know. That's where I came in. He wiped his face with his shirt sleeve, ignoring the insults being hurled at him as he headed for the door. Better than getting sticks and stones and Asterix ashtrays lobbed at him. You're not the only man in Paris, Chantal cried, her voice breaking, her sobbing breaths making a headache bloom under his injured brow. I will find another. Standing in the doorway, he looked back at her. She was stunning in her fury, her thick, dark hair rioting around her head, her eyes a rich caramel, glaring daggers at him like the angel of death, and her negligee falling off one shoulder and threatening to expose one full breast. Thank Christ she'd finally got the message. Bonne chance avec ça. He sent her a mocking salute before he slammed the door. The sound of something crashing against the wood echoed in the stairwell, making him flinch as he jogged down the steps. The chilly afternoon air in the apartment building's courtyard made the dent in his forehead sting some more. He hunched his shoulders against the pane, writing off the injury as collateral damage. No more hookups with crazy ladies, especially if they have a better throwing arm than Shane Warne. He headed for the metro station at Les Gobelins, resolving to stay celibate for a while. He had a perfectly good hand that had seen him through his horniest teenage years, and if nothing else, he needed to conserve his energy to navigate the perfect storm he had headed his way with Halle, which he'd set into motion on Saturday night at La Coupole, when he'd told Lizzie about his book deal while they'd been celebrating her 18th at the legendary brasserie on Montparnasse. She'd been excited and enthusiastic about the project, as he'd known she would be, enough to go home and blab all about it to her mother. He sidestepped a kamikaze scooter as he crossed the busy boulevard and headed into the metro. The train barreled into the station, its rubber tires squealing on the rails. He scored a seat for the 6-stop journey back to Châtelet before the metro car jostled into motion, the blank stares of the commuters endearing in their indifference. He'd felt bad for manipulating Lizzie, but how else was he supposed to get Halle's attention? Despite countless overtures in recent years, she was still insisting on communicating every damn thing through their respective legal representatives, which, apart from costing him an arm and a leg, had really begun to piss him off. No way could she still be mad at him. She'd had a hugely successful career, not to mention other relationships. She'd even had another child. So the only motivation for the silent treatment now, that he could see, was stubborn pride and a desire to see him suffer. Well, sod that. He'd suffered enough. Halle had limited his access to his child to 6 weeks a year, right up until she'd turned 16. And that lack of quality time was still screwing up his relationship with Lizzie now. Once upon a time, it had been a nice little ego boost to have Lizzie dub him Super Dad, because he was the one she did all the fun stuff with. But ever since Lizzie had hit her teens, he'd begun to realize Super Dad was really just a euphemism for superficial dad. Then his daughter had let slip she'd been in therapy a year ago, and scared the shit out of him. Emerging from the underground chaos of concrete and commuters at Châtelet-Léal, he crossed through the park situated above the